Fake HOA cops took my daughter, they didn't know her dad trains Green Berets. The phone call came at 5:17 in the evening, just as the sun began dipping low behind the oak trees. My wife's voice was shaking, almost breaking. They took her, she whispered, her words sharp and ragged. These men in uniforms came, they said they were HOA security. They took Emily. My heart froze. Emily, my little girl, was only 16. She was bright, full of laughter, the kind of soul who made even the grimmest days lighter. And now, she was gone. I had spent 20 years training some of the toughest men alive, Green Berets. I'd taught them to think fast, fight smart, and survive in places most people couldn't imagine. But nothing prepared me for the sound of my wife's broken voice on the phone. The disguise. The men came dressed like cops. Blue uniforms, badges that looked official, even radios clipped to their belts. To any neighbor, they looked like law enforcement. But to me, they were amateurs playing dress up. They had no idea that I'd drilled Green Berets on spotting fake IDs and forged insignias. They told my wife that Emily was in violation of community curfew rules, and that the HOA had ordered her to be escorted for questioning. The absurdity of it made my blood boil. Since when did an HOA have its own police force? But these weren't just nosy neighbors. They were predators hiding behind a fake authority. And they had made one critical mistake. They took the daughter of a man who trained warriors. The hunt begins. By the time I reached home, my wife was trembling on the porch, tears streaking her face. I held her shoulders. Where? I demanded. They drove toward the clubhouse, she whispered. I grabbed my gear bag from the truck. It wasn't weapons, at least not the kind you're thinking. It was tools. Surveillance drones. Lockpicks. A radio scanner. Tools I'd used 1,000 times in training exercises. Tools that had saved lives. I told my wife, stay here. Lock the doors. Trust me. Inside me, the soldier flicked on like a switch. My heart still ached, my stomach churned, but my mind went cold, sharp, and focused. The showdown at the clubhouse. The HOA clubhouse sat dark at the edge of the neighborhood, its windows glowing faintly. I circled wide, silent through the trees, every step precise. The men thought they were the hunters. They didn't realize they had become the prey. Through a cracked window, I spotted Emily. She sat in a chair, wrists bound with plastic ties, fear in her eyes. Two men loomed nearby, laughing. Another paced the room, pretending to guard her like he was on some TV cop show. I clenched my fists. I slid a drone from my pack and sent it buzzing low along the grass. It crept to the back door, transmitting the feed to my watch screen. The men inside never noticed. Then, I made my move. The lock on the back door gave way in under 5 seconds. I slipped inside, quiet as a shadow. Why are we even keeping her here? One of the men grumbled. The boss said her dad needed to be taught a lesson. HOA doesn't like people ignoring the rules. I stepped forward, my voice like steel. You just made the last mistake of your lives. The fight. They spun around, startled. One reached for his fake gun. Before his hand touched the grip, I had him on the ground, arm twisted, screaming. The second lunged with a baton. I sidestepped, drove my elbow into his ribs, and sent him crashing into a table. The third tried to pull Emily up as a shield. My vision went red. Let her go. I barked. Emily kicked his shin with all the force of her teenage anger. He stumbled, and that was all I needed. A flash of movement, a strike to his temple, and he was out cold. Within 30 seconds, the room was silent except for Emily's sobs and my heavy breathing. I cut her ties and pulled her into my arms. Dad, she whispered, shaking. I knew you'd come. The truth revealed. The real cops arrived 15 minutes later, sirens cutting the night. It was the officers I had trained with at the academy years ago. They took one look at the unconscious men, the fake badges, and the evidence, and shook their heads. You handled this cleaner than we would have, one said. Turned out Karen, the HOA tyrant herself, had hired these men. She wanted to teach my family respect, after I refused to repaint my house the color she demanded. She'd paid thugs, dressed them up like cops, and unleashed them. But she didn't expect me to be who I am. The resolution. Karen was arrested, charged with conspiracy, impersonation, and kidnapping. The fake cops were dragged off in cuffs. The entire neighborhood gathered on my lawn the next morning, apologizing, some ashamed they hadn't spoken up sooner. As for Emily, she changed that night. She wasn't just my little girl anymore. She was stronger. She'd seen fear, but she'd also seen her father fight for her. "You're not just my dad," she said softly later, sitting on the porch with me. "You're a protector. Not just for me, for everyone you train." I hugged her close, tears finally spilling free. "No, sweetheart," I said. "You're my reason to fight." The message. The WA thought they could control us with fear. They thought uniforms and intimidation would make us bow. But what they didn't understand is that strength doesn't come from rules, or threats, or fake power. Strength comes from love, from family, from the unbreakable bond between a father and his child. And when you mess with a man who trains warriors, you don't just pick a fight, you declare war on everything he stands for. They took my daughter. But in the end, it was their world that came crashing down.